and thank you everyone. It's great to be here today speaking from Darug and Gundungurra country. I'd just like to pay respects to the First Nations people as I begin. So yes, I am speaking today on behalf of myself and also worked with Liz Millen from the Australian Right to Food Coalition to reflect on this scenario of fair food in the city. And it really highlights the importance of enhancing the capacities of cities as sites of food production, with food produced in streets, backyards, apartment buildings, on council property, and in open spaces, as well as through peri-urban agriculture. Healthy food, because of this, becomes more abundant and accessible in cities, and importantly plays a role in enhancing food security in face of crisis. More awareness of food sources and direct relationships between producers and consumers of food are created through a range of urban agriculture, community gardens, backyards, food growing and farming. And this is underpinned also importantly by zoning and taxation and regulation to build on community initiatives and support localised food production. Local procurement policies are also a key factor as food is produced locally and supplied locally. And so such a vision emphasises the role of land use planning in enabling food to be produced in diverse sites across cities and for these uses to be protected. In a Sydney context from which I write and research, we know that our food producing lands are under continuous threat from the encroachment of urban development, with studies at the University of Technology, Sydney, showing how agricultural land uses have decreased over time, with market gardens on the fringes of Sydney currently contributing around 20% of the fresh fruit and vegetable productions needed. This productive capacity is threatened from development, with predictions that this could decrease to producing only 6% by 2031. So preserving land for sustainable agriculture is thus increasingly important, as is imaginatively repurposing unused land and creating new spaces for food production, such as rooftop and verge gardens. Already, Sydney has more than 130 community gardens that contribute to urban food production. And this scenario highlights the possibility of expanding urban food production for food justice. From the perspective of Right to Food, a coalition of organisations, academics and people concerned with ensuring that healthy food is positioned by government and society as a collective right, we recognise the potential of such a scenario for making food more accessible and more readily available in the context of rising food insecurity. The long table scenario as well speaks to the importance of ensuring that everyone's right to food is protected and legislated in law, as do the 4 pathways envisaged. So we need to ensure that access to healthy food is considered a collective, not individual right, and that work towards scenarios where the barriers restricting people's ability to access safe, healthy and culturally appropriate food are addressed. These barriers include the inadequacy of current government support payments such as JobSeeker and Youth Allowance, the control of pricing by supermarkets and food deserts in remote and rural areas. Importantly, we see that it is vital that we ensure governments take responsibility for supporting the right to food and take responsibility to address food insecurity. As shown in these scenarios, civil society organisations such as Right to Food have a role to play in advocating for food to be considered an essential part of infrastructure, vital for our collective survival alongside other elements such as healthcare, education and water. Examples such as government policies in Belo Horizonte, Brazil, well documented in João Chappelle's book, Beginning to End Hunger, provide us with inspiration of how it might look when governments take a system-wide responsibility for food security. Their approach involved increasing food production locally through urban agriculture and food growing initiatives, increasing opportunities for farmers to access markets, such as those talked about in the Fair Food in the City scenario, and also through hosting farmers markets in town squares, encouraging local food enterprises, but also through setting up government-run supermarkets and large canteens or community restaurants where people could access affordable, locally produced food. Such an example reveals the importance of enhancing the availability of food and understanding the critical role governments play in enhancing the capacity of local food networks through appropriate policy and practice interventions that reinforce our collective right to food alongside the vital and important work of civil society organisations. Thank you.